Hi, this is John Ryan, and this is 5 December 2010. And with me is my mother, Martha Ryan, and my daughters, Carole and Evelyn. And we're going to start with a few questions from Carole.
Have you ever been on a roller coaster?
Yes, I have. When I was growing up, we used to go to the county fair every year, and that was one of the things that we did. So I've probably ridden on a roller coaster 8 or 10 times.
Yeah. Did you like going on them?
It was okay. I wasn't real excited about it, but it was okay.
When did you first fly an airplane?
I think it was in 1975. Grandpa and I drove his parents to Arizona for the winter, and they were going to keep their car there. So we drove the car out and flew back to Iowa.
Wow, so you were 38 the first time ever.
I think so.
Yeah.
To the best of my memory.
Was it like a? I don't know. Was it like a big deal? I mean, were you kind of?
At that time, it was just the way to go. Earlier, when I made long trips, it was easier to go by train, and that was when I was younger. And after I got married and we were on the farm, we didn't do that much traveling very far away.
Right. What is your earliest memory?
Oh, probably when we still lived in Ottumwa before we moved to the farm. I was 5 years old when we moved, so I have some memories of doing things in that neighborhood where we had a lot of cousins who lived in the neighborhood, and I particularly remember walking to school, because when I think about it today, I walked with one of my cousins to school, and it was about a mile, and we went by ourselves, which would be completely unheard of for 5-year-olds today.
We won't let you guys walk 200 feet by yourselves, I don't think. Right, Carole?
Wow, I'm in 3rd grade.
Yeah? And Grandma was in kindergarten, and they walked a mile to school.
Oh, it's a very safe neighborhood.
It was a very safe neighborhood. You wouldn't even know if there were raccoons or skunks in there.
Probably. It was in town, so there probably weren't any stray animals.
Yeah.
With binoculars. Watching.
Did you have pets as a kid?
Yes. We always had a dog. And one I remember the most is Shep. And he was a collie, and the animals were always work dogs. They helped with the farm work. And what Shep did was the cows would be in the pasture, and we would take Shep and we would go and get the cows, and he would help us bring home the cows for the milking twice a day. And so it wasn't really very much work for us, but it was because he did most of the work. We were just kind of supervising.
Do you remember any stories that your parents told you growing up?
My father was a big storyteller. He always had stories about what he'd done when he was growing up. He was a baseball player, and he liked to tell about those games that he played in, and he would tell stories about his relatives and things, and we always got a kick when we were a little bit older. He would have stories about people. He was a politician, and but when he was younger, his family was in a dairy business, and they would deliver milk to the people in the town in what kind of looks like a van today, but then was called a panel truck. And he would always tell stories about the people that he knew, the ones that what politics they had, and whether or not they paid their bills, and that type of thing.
What kind of strategy did he use, like in his campaigns? Did you ever hear?
He was pretty much a hands-on type person. He would go and visit everybody, and he would go to gatherings of farmers and things like that. And one of the strategies he had after he started running for office was we would go to the polls and hand out his cards. He had to stand a certain distance from the polling place, and that was one of the things that we helped with.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it's obviously, a small, type of county like that. I mean, this is the county supervisor. I mean, it's not like, there wasn't like robocalling and...
Although my mother did call and encourage people to do absentee ballots, and she actually got in trouble for that one time because they thought the campaign had overstepped the line. But you have to remember that he had been born in that community and knew everybody. And his father and grandfather had also been county supervisors, so there was a family tradition.
Nepotist. Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
No, they were years apart. They weren't right on top of each other.
Yeah. What were your grandparents like?
That's one of the reasons that I've worked on family stories, because I spent a lot of time with them, and I don't remember a lot, particularly the grandparents. When I was born, we shared a duplex with them when we were running the dairy in town. And
Were you running the dairy in town?
My grandfather and my father operated a dairy called the Highland Dairy, and they milked the cows, bottled the milk, and delivered it to people in Ottumwa. And one of the reasons that we moved to the farm was that during the war, they couldn't get gas to deliver the milk, and so that's when my dad bought the farm and started his own thing. I think he was ready to start out on his own anyway. Mm-hmm. And then my grandmother died my grandmother Horn died when I was about 5, and Grandpa Horn moved to the country because he owned a farm not too far from ours. And he spent a lot of time at our house because he was lonely. And one of the things we did with him was pick blackberries. There was a lot of wild blackberries on the farm, and we would pick those because he always knew that my mother would make him blackberry pie and blackberry jam and that type of thing. And if we had a really bonus bumper crop, we would sell them in town. We would go door to door with the blackberries and sell them. And my Boblin's grandparents, my mother's parents, moved to Ottumwa during the war also, and we spent quite a bit of time with them. My grandmother taught me how to sew, and also once I learned how to drive, I was kind of the errand runner for the grandparents. And my Grandpa Horn, when the boys started playing baseball, I would go and pick him up and take him to the games because my dad didn't want him driving too much at that time.
So your Grandpa Boblin's, he was of German descent,
right?
And he had actually lived in Germany.
Yes, he didn't move to this country until he was about 18, and the story is he was evading military conscription, and so he moved at that time because there were other relatives in Iowa, and that's how he ended up in Iowa.
So what year time frame was that?
About 1898.
1898.
And he met my grandmother, and they were married in 1904.
Uh-huh.
So, and they settled in southern Iowa, and there were other relatives there.
Uh-huh. Now, so he grew up in Germany. Was there any German folks near where he lived? I mean, obviously he knew German, spoke German, but probably wasn't...
No. In fact, and one of the kind of interesting things about him in Germany was that his father was an educator. I think he was like the equivalent of a high school principal. And when he moved to the United States, he kept in contact with a large German family, and he wrote letters, subscribed to German newspapers. And during World War I, he had to quit the subscription to the German newspapers because it was not thought of well in the town where he lived.
Did he speak with a distinct German accent?
I don't remember that, no. he read extensively in English and everything.
Uh-huh.
So, but there weren't any other Germans in that town. In fact, the town that they lived closest to, Melrose, Iowa, they were the only non-Catholic family in the town.
Mm-hmm. Did Grandma Rand, your great grandpa Bob-Owen's daughter, did she speak any German? Even like little bits of?
No.
They never spoke.
No.
He never spoke German in the household or anything like that.
No, nothing at all there.
Yeah.
He was very active in what was going on in the United States. In fact, he was very political, and I can remember during the election season when Eisenhower was running, and my father was running for a county office that he did not get elected to, but Grandpa Bottoms had a huge picture of Ike on his front porch.
Huh.
So there was a little controversy there.
I suppose so, because obviously Grandpa Moran was a staunch Democrat.
Very, very staunch Democrat.
Although Eisenhower was someone that they didn't even know which party he was going to join.
Yeah,
so I guess it wouldn't have been as controversial as...
It was kind of a kick in the face.
I suppose so. What about your Grandma Bobbins? Tell me a little bit about her.
Okay, she moved to Iowa with her family when she was about 7 or 8 years old. They moved from West Virginia, where I have a lot of relatives. My brother Phil's in contact with a lot of the genealogy people there. They rode the train to the Midwest, and again they came to Iowa. They came to Council Bluffs because they had relatives there, Lucas County. And she, in fact, I've got a story about that she wrote. I'll send you sometime. One of the interesting things to me about her was that I'm pretty sure she didn't have any more than a third-grade education, because that's how much schooling she'd had when they moved to Iowa. And when they moved to Iowa, there wasn't a school in the area where they lived, and I think by the time the school was established, she was helping with the younger children in the family. But she was a very literate person. I have some things that she's written, but it wasn't uncommon at that time for children to quit going to school once they learned how to read and write and do basic arithmetic. And children who went to high school were generally white and affluent, because there wasn't school buses in the rural areas until after World War II. So if people went to high school, which were in towns, they had to have a means of transportation, or else someone that they could live with in the town.
And what was her maiden name? She was Irish, though.
No.
She was not?
She was English.
Uh-huh.
Casebolt.
Casebolt. Okay.
And my brother Phil has a lot of correspondence with the Casebolts in West Virginia, where she came from.
Okay. And on the other side, great-grandpa Rand obviously was Irish.
Yes.
And his wife's name was?
Dawson.
Dawson. No, hence Katie Dawson Horan. Okay,
yes.
All right.
Very Irish.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good start for an interview. We might do some more from time to time.
Okay.
And this is John Ryan signing off.